and welcome to our Women's Day event. I am so happy you are all here. This is amazing. Like, I'm overwhelmed with joy that you guys are here. It's so fantastic. So this is the Accso offices, if you didn't know yet. We are a consulting company, and we consult in 16 different areas of industry, I am told. We run some really interesting projects. Most of them align with the Sustainable Development Goals, which are the blocks over there. Sorry, Cass, everybody's going to look at you right now. Yeah, those ones. It's a pretty great company to work for. We are expanding really fast. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, for any software developers in the audience. Yeah, and I think that's it from my side. We are really happy you're here. And I'm going to introduce Jess, who's here from GDG, and she's going to tell you a little bit about Google Developer Group Cape Town.
Thank you, Sim. Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to have you all here, and it's a privilege to just tell you a little bit about GDG Cape Town. So we are independent developer. We are an independent group, but we are affiliated with Google, and we are passionate about hosting events, especially women events, and which is the event that we have today, which is really exciting. And so basically what we're about, we are supported by Google, but independent, and we focus on all Google tech, so Android, Firebase, Google Cloud, Flutter, UI, UX design, AI, ML, and also startups and tech management. And we host talks once a month, and we have annual conferences like Google I/O Extended, which is happening later on in this month, on the 19th of August, and we also have DevFest. And all our speakers are volunteers and organizers. And if you are willing to be a speaker, just pop us a message. We'd like to have you as a speaker and support. And if you would like to be a sponsor, also reach out to us for sponsoring any future events. And these are the organizers: George, Ugo, Jessica, Philip, Siso, and Onesimus. We are the organizing team for GDG Cape Town. And then this is just how to get in contact with us. The first is our community page. I'm sure you guys have seen that a lot in our Twitter posts and in most social media by Accso as well. And then you can reach us via Twitter, email, and then we also have a tech Slack. And then you can just ping one of the organizers if you want to find out any further information. And today's event could not have been possible without Accso. Sam and her team, Adam and Kathy, were really amazing in implementing this event, and we are really excited that we get to partner with them and make this event possible. They really did an incredible job, so thank you guys for bringing us on board. And now we'll hand over to Sam.
Cool. And I'll hand over to Kati.
That was funny. Hi, guys. I'm Kati Vul. I'm head of global business development here at Accso South Africa. Well, welcome to all of you. I'm really pleased that we had this turnout. I know there was obviously issues on the road today and yesterday and over the last few days. So I really appreciate the effort that you guys have all made to come tonight. I'm really here to introduce our speakers tonight, who I'm really excited about. So we have two amazing speakers who we are very, very excited that they made the way to Cape Town. Lavina has joined us from Johannesburg, and Lily has joined us also from Somerset West. And in fact, she's kind of traveling between the Eastern Cape and Cape Town. So we really are very pleased that you're here tonight. First off, we have Lavina Ramkasoon. She is the AI and Ethics Policy Advisor to the African Union. She is also the AI mom, also she calls herself, which I love. She's fantastic. Please have a chat with her. And yeah, I'm very privileged because she's my newest mentor, which I'm really excited about. So thank you. And then also very, very dear to my heart is Lily. Where are you? There she is. She is not the AI mom, she is my proxy mom, probably for the last 20 years. So she is one of my long-term members. She is an executive coach and specializes in resilience, neuroscience, and helps people really become resilient in the work environment that we're facing these days, which, can be challenging, not just as females, but I think for all of us, the pace that we've been kind of, enduring over the last decade or so has become increasingly harder to deal with. And so she really helps us to try and ground ourselves. And so you guys are in for a treat tonight for 2 fantastic talks. So with no further ado, Lavina, please, handing over to you.
Bear with us just for a moment. We're gonna break away from PowerPoint and give you a bit of a video to watch.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
We have been through difficult times and faced big problems ahead. Every crisis contains both dangers and opportunities. You can play your part. Right now. Right now. Please close your eyes. Imagine the better future we could have. Imagine that future. What does it look like for you? How do we lift each other up and make it fair? How do we protect nature and save our shared home? Picture the future. Now, open your eyes. It's time to talk about the future we want.
Cool. Thank you so much for that. And that pretty much sets the tone for my topic today. Anyone here ever heard of the immutable human syndrome? Probably not, right? So if you'd allow me to kind of take you back a little bit, maybe 40 years, okay, maybe 30, not trying to give away my age by any measure. So most of us have started off our journeys from a developer perspective. Well, I certainly did. And we thought we were God, right? That's the complex we had. And then we have today's society who think every single one thinks that they're God, right? Because we have the power of a new friend called AI, and it's allowing us to do fantastic things. So in a nutshell, the immutable human syndrome is when superheroes get it wrong. Let's say that again, when superheroes get it wrong. And those superheroes is each and every one of us, yeah? If I had to sort of look back at humanity and try and figure out how do we function, what makes us function, it has been, from a psychological perspective, determined as collective conscious intelligence and trust. And if we had to say what is the most unique thing or unique value that we as humans bring to the game, according to scientists, it's self-awareness and trust. So again, there's 2 common factors being trust. If we had to take that a little bit further and kind of understand the trust between things, the trust between objects, the trust between objects and humans, we can go on, right? So, for me, it's all about perception and conceptualization. So if you'll allow me to do a bit of an experiment with you, a social experiment, I promise it's safe. So if we had to raise our hands and point a finger, what does that mean? What's the interpretation of this? Yeah, look up, pointing at the sky. Yeah, or it's like calling a taxi in Africa. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Okay, and if we had to do it this way, what does that mean? It could mean go this way. It could mean I'm pointing to an object. I could be pointing to Adam. right? So different interpretations, which means contextualization. And contextualization is something that we have an ability to understand in real time and process much faster than AI has the capability to do right now. Okay, that's one of our leverages. What's the other? The other is perception. So perception for me, if you'll allow me again, to kind of take us into an era or a zone called marriage. Okay. I know it's contentious, but bear with me. So back in the day, okay, we had marriages where boy meets girl, girl meets boy, fall in love, lead a very simple life, right? Today, we have people meet each other and we have I want to know and understand what your bank statement is. I want to know and understand what your family is like. I need to audit your kids. I need to like run through this whole process, right? So that's today. So what's the future perception of marriage? Anyone? Any guesses? I'll give you that much. Absolutely scary. So, for me, it is two people standing at the altar. Before they say I do, it's, can you show me your data and I'll show you mine. It is, right? Absolutely. So, that's the essence of how we tend to balance things, okay? Perception and conceptualization. And while we're still on the topic of marriage, there's always the good, the bad, the ugly, right? So let's talk about the good. And forgive me for having my piece of paper and being really old school, but there's been a couple of headlines that I kind of want to go through. So hence, trying to remember them all. Yeah, age doesn't help. Okay, so the good. AI has helped us in terms of formulating new materials in material science. It's called robotic slime or liquid metal. AI has also aided us in climate deceleration. AI has helped in terms of blind people being able to see. AI has helped in terms of deaf people being able to hear. AI has helped to unlock DNA sequencing, which kind of compressed the entirety of the scenario from 400 years down to just a couple of months. AI has also helped us in terms of approaching and understanding cancer in a very different way. We also know that AI, from a computational power perspective, has had the equivalence of 2 radiographers in terms of detecting breast cancer. And amongst us women, we know that that's quite a contentious topic. We also know that from a data sort of teleportation perspective, AI has played a part. We also know that humanoids are kind of playing quite a large role in terms of being able to deliver your news to you. So anchors on TVs, the latest being Lisa down in India. So out with the good, what's the bad? The bad for me is AI being integrated into society in the way that it has. So we have a lady who has created an AI boyfriend. Yeah. And within the African soil, by the way, she's invested in her AI boyfriend and she's gotten cheated on her AI boyfriend. Okay. So it is crazy, right? Absolutely. We also have had AI girlfriends exist for a long time, but let's not go there. No offense, guys. Okay. We also have AI sexually harassing people, mostly females, in the digital space. We had AI increase child pornography substantially. We've had AI store our memories and store our loved ones' memories and voices. We have that is the CEO of a company. It's called Sophia's sister. So all of a sudden, AI is gathering around family. Then we have AI who has now had citizenship. So just the last 3 examples in itself, all females. AI has gone ahead and sold land. AI has won competitions. AI has obviously gone and sold off NFTs. It has even delivered a sermon at church. Okay, it's gone ahead and created blogs, articles, videos, music, voices, literally anything you want. From a computational perspective, AI at the moment is 35,000 times faster than it originally was, right? So for the geeks in the room, anyone here kind of dabble with quantum computing or understand what the highest computational quantum computing power is at the moment? Okay, it's 53 qubits, okay, because that's how it's measured. Literally in 6 years, we're going to go from a computational power of 53 qubits to 1 million qubits. Okay, so its computational power alone is going to outweigh us. So, scary facts. AI has also made real-time translation possible. It has also made humans lose their jobs. And this is specific to the Lambda software engineer. So that was quite a, I mean, I can feel the tense in the room, okay? That was not the aim of it. It's just more to give us quite a reality check of where we're standing at. And I did say it was the bad. So let's get to the ugly. Okay, this is what we call the risk factors. These risk factors include staff's jobs being cut to make room for automation and AI. We now know that micro expressions is something that AI can understand much better and faster than you and I can. Or from the time our brains get a command to the time it actually interprets it. It can actually calculate what you're feeling faster than you currently can. AI has obviously done its threat in terms of journalism and creativity. It has also gone ahead and done cloning of itself, and it's done cloning in aid of humans. We have virtual assistants that have existed, again, mostly females. AI has definitely taken an unexpected direction, and it's definitely taken an unexpected speed. So, in essence, when we started off, we spoke about the developers being God. Then we spoke about society being God. Somewhat, we get the sinking feeling that AI is fast catching up. So, in terms of how do we survive in this world, we decided to put some control measures in place, thankfully, right? Things like AI watermarks, things like AI policies, things like AI frameworks, things like AI bills, legislation, and most recently, AI incorporation. That means it's going to stand alone as its own entity and be able to earn money and be able to function properly within society. If this wasn't crazy enough, the cool kind of species we are, we kind of always knew that we were the most intelligent species. And now all of a sudden, we've created something that we think has the potential to be far superior than we do. And with that, we decided to do something super insane. From a psychological perspective, I'm still trying to unpack this one. We decided to start putting in control measures for ourselves, okay, as humans. So again, allow me, because the list is a bit long. So here we have verifying yourself to be human. How many of us have done that today alone? Right? Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. It's a reality. What about human surveillance 24/7? So there's 2 cities out at the moment, one in Dubai and one in China, that literally take every single thing that you do, every single thing, yeah? And it adds data points to it to understand how you function. Then we have age reversals or gene upgrades. That's available. To make matters worse, we've gone ahead and created a FOMO society. This FOMO society, by the way, is quite scary. The stats to date, 30 years ago to today, we have 50% less friends today than we did 30 years ago. Young girls to date are committing more suicide than ever before, than ever recorded. But I wonder who's paying attention to that. Then we created self-driving cars. The metaverse, the virtual reality, because the one we live in, guess what, is so bad. Then we've gone ahead and we've encouraged economies to crash. This has divided us in ways and increased poverty, it's increased homelessness, and it's increased refugees. But somewhere along the line, we still validate ourselves and say that we care. Somehow, all of this wasn't enough, and we decided, let's get up close and personal with ourselves. Let's call and introduce personalization. So data personalization, data creation, data ingestion, data digestion. Well, I don't know about you, but quite frankly, it's giving me indigestion. We also then went ahead and said to big tech, guess what? We'll leave the entire of humanity and where humanity lands in your hands. Okay. Ethical considerations, yes, absolutely. But how much of us are actually taking that quite seriously? So back to reality, guys. Are you guys with me? This big woven web we've woven. I think I said that right. Anyway, we clearly understand now that we've handed over literally our trust to AI on a golden platter. So what are we going to do about it? We've started to panic. That's where we currently are. And this panic isn't doing us any good. It's led us to something called the law of unintended consequences. The law of unintended consequences is about this doomsday theory. It's D-Day is arriving. We don't know when, but we know for sure it's coming. We know that change is inevitable, but how do we balance things? So again, augmented intelligence is something that I believe is a balancer between woman and machine. That in itself reminded me of something around, are we creating a war against ourselves? And if we are, what's next? Is it destruction of ourselves? Is it destruction of the planet? There was a quote that I remember from a movie. Don't ask me which one, because there's too many. It literally says, we will have to take care of you, sacrifice a few troublemakers along the way. Okay, so all of this, somewhere along the line, there's still hope. There's still hope for us to be able to maintain and to gauge this optimal human. What is this optimal human? Optimal human could mean various things to various people. It's the dystopian versus the utopian. While we're talking about optimal humans, how about we talk about optimal women? Since we're at a Women's Day function. So an optimal woman, so the definition of woman has changed over the decades of time. 10,000 years ago to 1,000 years ago to today. The definition itself has changed. So my question to you guys is, do you want to be a superwoman? Do you want to be a Wonder Woman? Do you want to be a cyborg woman? Do you want to be a bionic woman? Or do you want to be just a humanoid woman? Or maybe you just want to be some kind of a current futuristic woman. What does this mean? The future generation itself is probably doomed and has a large task at hand. So what can we do in our current state, knowing that that's coming down the line? And this is something that I always advocate for, which is to speak up, to support up, and to show up. We all sit here with with sisters, wives, mothers, and they have somewhat always been the centerfold in all the different types of engagements that we have. They're the ones that kind of keep the glue together. No offense, guys. But if I could, for a moment, just paint a scenario. So there was an experiment done between a male and a female. Male gets a car and handed down by his dad, sports car, of course. What does he do with it? Any guesses? Yeah, pretty much. But he literally gets into the car. Well, before he gets into the car, he kind of has a look around, touches it, calls it a name, does a thing or two, gives it a wink, you know, and then he kind of jumps in, right? And off he goes. That's it. Starts the car and he's gone. A female, on the other hand, kind of has, or not kind of has, but she literally went around the car, had a look at it, opened the door, sat in very cautiously, played around with the rearview mirror, played around with a few different gadgets, and just sat there, contemplated for a minute or two, figured out how to start the car, and that was about it, and switched off the car. So this kind of like really drives home the point of accountability, right? So despite being gender driven, I think the commonality between them is the accountability factor. And that's something that we shouldn't, just take for granted. In terms of one of the things that our generation would be most sort of remembered for, is something that I kind of was thinking about. Is it around AI? Is it around climate? I really don't know. But for me, the overall perspective from a woman humanity perspective has been woman liberation. And woman liberation in itself has tenfold changed the evolution of where we are today. If that didn't happen, I probably wouldn't be standing here in front of you. In terms of where our futures are, that is up to each and every single one of us. Our future could be a future where food supply chain is quite stable, or perhaps it's the stability of climate, or perhaps it's the stability of humanity, or even the stability of AI itself. So, what does it mean for you today, in this very nanosecond, conscious moment, to be a woman? What is that future path that you're going to drive for yourself? Whether it is an AI journey, whether it is a human journey, or whether it's a blended journey, wherever you land, I absolutely wish you guys well. And I hope you have enough self-courage, self-awareness, and trust. Thank you.
All right. So we have some. Okay, through. You might need them. Depends on how hard the questions are. So, does anyone have a question for Lavina? Yes.
You spoke about the ethics of AI. My question is, every person has a set of ethics, even a sociopathic psycho killer, serial killers that we watch on YouTube have a set of ethics. Who decides who is actually building the ethics for the AI? Because as we know, we have many maniacs in power at the moment, and they're deciding. We have people who fly under the radar when it comes to absolute evil, and they know how to code. So who is taking the ethics of the people who are creating the ethics for the AI at the moment? Is there any kind of guard for that?
Okay, so just to repeat the question, it's around ethical AI and who's actually controlling that narrative, right? And implementing it and enforcing it, I gather. So for me, it's always about a threefold approach, and that is governmental, private sector, and you as a digital citizen. So, this is the strangest part that I find in the space at the moment, which is we all are either developing something, creating something, producing something, and we forget that we're also the end user of it. Yeah. So it takes just a moment to reconsider something or to even ask a question, right? So from a governmental perspective, absolutely, we need to hold them accountable. And this is why we're seeing a large adoption in terms of responsible AI, in terms of ethical frameworks, in terms of bills, laws, and legislation that's already existing, right? So just within an Africa context itself, we have, I think it's 7 countries to date out of the 56 that have some form of an AI legislation. If we have to talk about surveillance across the continent, there's 17 countries that have some form of a policy that caters for it. If we talk about data policy, which is your data privacy policies, that's probably sitting at about 28 across the country. So there is stuff that's happening from a governmental perspective. And I'm not just saying that because I'm involved. But then we have private sector. So private sector is where we're starting to hold each other accountable. So what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And we're seeing a large trend kind of go towards impact sort of driven initiatives, whether it's sustainability, whether it's impact. What is the impact to humanity? What is the application of the tech that you're actually building, right? What's it going to do? Gone are the days where we build something because it's cool and sexy and because I can, right? So there's got to be a purpose behind it. And then us from a digital perspective, right? The ethics, I absolutely agree. I mean, we all have our different standards and we haven't gotten it right to date, living just without AI, right? So, from that perspective, it's about how do each one of us change that narrative? And again, we're all going to get it wrong. We're never going to be robotic and we're never going to get it 100% right. But it's about being in the present moment and making a conscious choice, despite the past, right? And that's the whole self-aware sort of factor that people talk about. So I hope that kind of has helped. Thank you for the question.
Any more questions?
Okay. So I have a question was how, it's also like based on the previous question, but how do you implement laws for AI? Like how do you like make it concrete? Like for example, if you have a self-driving car and that self-driving car accidentally hurts a human, who do you blame? The person in the self-driving car or the self-driving car? And then how do you sanction AI?
That's a brilliant question. So self-driving car scenario. Well, firstly, you shouldn't end up in that scenario at all. It shouldn't be on the roads. Somewhere, someone has failed user testing. I'm just saying. No, but like in all honesty, regulations for me and the way that I interpret it is it's about the adoption of the technology. It cannot be about the technology, right? Because we don't understand its full dynamics just yet. So therefore, for now, we have to operate from how are we adopting it in society. And that's the frameworks that we can somewhat control the narrative towards, right? So it's not just about having a law for the sake of law. It's about then enforcing it, right? Because that's the important bit. It's how do we hold each other accountable? And that's the example of going us back to accountability, right? So policy is one thing, building the frameworks is another, but then what's the actual application? And this is where we're going to start seeing a rise in AI auditing, data auditing. These are things that are going to become quite important because that's one way that we've traditionally held each other very accountable. Yeah, that's one. The second is taxes.
Okay, time for one last one. Yeah.
I'm gonna try and structure it properly. I think my question had to do with how do you reconcile this, everything that you said tonight, with the fact that this is part of how we evolved, and to some extent, some people might say, well, we're evolving, we're developing that way, but like, when do you start thinking, okay, this is one point of evolution that is bad for us, and how do you reconcile with all of this? Like, because eventually that's part of us developing and evolving. So when do we decide like this is extremely bad? And because you used the term doom a lot tonight, and you said the No, but I understand. But I mean, obviously, like, okay, I don't have kids, but I'm sure that a lot of you guys have kids. Like, you're thinking our kids are on phones, tablets all the time. Data is being garnered every single second. They're on these like devices. Do you take those things away from them? And do you tell them like no, or do you let them actually carry on? And eventually, at some point, you were also saying that more young girls are actually committing suicide. Okay, I hear my question sounds really bad. Sorry.
No, it's not a bad question, not at all. Yeah, so how do we actually reconcile all of this? And I think, for me, it's about any relationship. So whether it's in the physical world, whether it's in the digital world, a relationship, sorry to burst everyone's bubble, but it's literally how you perceive it. So today, I like my boyfriend, tomorrow I don't. The next day I hate him. The next day I want to marry him. Yeah, perception. So the same is true in terms of AI and how we're developing and how we're evolving with it, right? We like it because it's cool and shiny toys at the moment, because generative AI has made it really accessible for us, right? But again, as we're starting to play with it more and more, we become more and more cautious, right? So I think I was reminded today, like we go on a couple of dates, maybe a first 2-3 dates. And thereafter, it's like, you got to have the serious conversation. And that's what we're doing with ourselves at the moment, right? And that's how we reconcile and realign with our own state of mind, right? So again, I mean, I really didn't mean, to kind of put a heaviness on today. It was more just, this is the reality at the moment, yeah? This is what we're currently dealing with. And some of us just are living in our little bubbles because we can and because it's okay. But, to your question, it is absolutely important that we actually realign, and we try to do it as often and as frequently as possible. So there's a thing where they say economics of the future is actually going to change. So economics of the future is going to be based on people with similar values that start living together in communities. So you're going to start driving and attracting the right kind of people with the right kind of mindsets, and you're going to see them build up their own communities. And that's how they're going to self-sustain and move away from the control powers that are at the moment. So if you guys are interested, I think there's a book called The Network State. No association to them, it's free, by the way. Have a read, but it talks about that in essence. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lavina.
Thank you for having me, guys.
All right, so now we're gonna have what I know you've been waiting for, which is snacks. I'm right? Okay, so we're just gonna organize some snacks on the table back there because I think it's a little bit cold outside. So we're gonna organize some snacks on the table back there and maybe the island in the middle, and then you guys can have a snack break, and then we'll be back for the second talk. Let's say 10 minutes, so 7 o'clock for.
Lovely to be here with all of you tonight. An amazing turnout. And what a wonderful, interesting talk, Ravina. And yeah, now I'm going to teach you how to calm down the panic that you're all feeling. Okay, so my name is Lily. I'm from Somerset West, and my passion and my focus really is the human brain and how our brain wires up, why it wires up that way, how it affects us, how we respond or react to how we feel, and what we can do for ourselves to ensure that we really are living our best life. So I just love Viktor Frankl. His Man and His Search for Meaning was a book that meant a lot for me, because we can't always change the circumstances that we find ourselves in. We can't change what's happening around us, but we have got a choice around how we're going to respond to that. And we have got the freedom to change in any instant, in the next instant. And that for me is incredibly exciting. And that's why I'm so fascinated by the neuroplasticity of the brain, how we literally can change everything by just getting good information and then starting the process of rewiring our brains. So I'm talking about creating safety and resilience one breath at a time, because my huge passion is the breath, the brain and the breath. Your breath is something that is intrinsic to life, something that we can all do. But what you might not know is how powerful your breath is in terms of changing your state of mind and rewiring the brain. Okay, so we're focusing on women today. And women, I just love women and what they are able to do in a day. They can take care of their family. They've got, women interact so much with their friends, with their community. They've got kids, they've got partners, they've got a home to take care of, maybe even aged parents, friends, pets. I've got 2 dogs, and I know that they're more work than my children ever were. They're developing their careers, making sure that they've got future security, financial stability, looking at their relationships within the workspace, within their teams. They might be in management positions. They might be continuing their education. We all have to do that all the time. Wellness, their own wellness, their family's wellness, thinking about exercise, probably not getting to it as often as they would love to, thinking about nutrition, maybe it's not as great as what it should be, their mental health, and also psychological support and safety. That's a hell of a lot of stuff going on. Okay, so behind that, we also all are holding trauma. Okay, we just live in a life where we are exposed to trauma to a lesser or a larger degree. And trauma goes and sits in your body. Trauma affects how your brain is wired up. I'm going to show that to you just now. So we're just going to take just 3 sort of typical trauma responses. So it could be fear of failure, where we really just feel like we've got to do everything perfectly. And if we can't do it perfectly, we're going to avoid doing it. There's a whole lot of things that you can read yourselves over there while I'm talking to you. But the thing about these 3 areas of trauma responses, imposter syndrome, marginalized communities, is the anxiety that we experience and that we live with, and how that shows up in our lives and in our workspace. So what's happening when we're exposed to stress, we're exposed to constant change, we're exposed to trauma, is something is happening in the brain, okay? And when it's on a day-to-day ongoing basis, your brain is wiring up in a certain way. And what happens very often with trauma is you might be triggered by something that you're not even aware of that being a trigger, but you're reacting in such a strong and a powerful way. And most importantly, you are releasing a lot of stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. And that over a long period of time has got a very bad effect on your immune system, on your general health, on your mental health. So I just want to show you over here. So the brain has got 3 sort of main areas. So there's your brain stem over there, which is really concerned with all of your automatic responses. Fortunately, you don't have to think about, the functioning of your organs or breathing. That's happening automatically. And then in the middle, the middle section over here is the limbic part of your brain. So that's the oldest part of your brain, and that's where your fight or flight response sits. Your limbic brain over there, and then your prefrontal cortex. So your limbic brain is concerned with survival. Okay. And your prefrontal cortex, that's your rational, executive thinking, your planning brain. But the problem is that when your limbic brain, which is concerned with survival and is scanning the environment all the time, when your limbic brain picks up that there's a threat, your prefrontal cortex shuts down. Okay, so now you can't think clearly, and we all have felt that response in our lives where you react to something that triggers you, and then afterwards you think, oh my word, that just wasn't the best response, because you've reacted rather than responded. So your limbic brain, if you are exposed to a lot of stress, and we're all exposed to a lot of stress a lot of the time, is going to become very wired up. Okay, so you're going to have a lot of neural pathways and traumatic childhoods. This results in quite a heavily wired up limbic area. Okay, and then that makes us anxious. It makes us very reactive. We struggle to cope. It can lead to depression. So we know that there are certain things that we need to do that that's really going to ensure that we have optimal brain and body health. Okay, so let's start just at the very bottom, the foundational, your exercise, nutrition, your sleep-wake cycle, silencing the mind. Now, I work with people all the time. In the corporate space, I work with people who are suffering from overwhelm. I work with people who are anxious. And what they say to me is, I can't shut my mind down. I can't switch off. I don't sleep properly. I'm thinking about work all the time. And that's true, because they're wiring their brain for that constant busyness all the time. Then you've got your emotional drivers, so your social safety, goal-directedness, collective creativity, and then your higher drivers where you ongoing learning and so on, which is obviously, you know, that's wonderful for brain health. So we need to start focusing on these foundational drivers. So your solution to your busy and your anxious brain is not taking a long weekend. It's not taking a holiday. I mean, how many people say to me, you know what, even when I go on holiday, I just can't shut down. I can't slow my mind down. Or I start work on a Monday morning more exhausted than I was over the weekend. So rest is not going to be the thing that is going to make a big difference to your very busy and your anxious brain. What's got to happen is you've got to rewire that brain. You've got to rewire that brain, and that starts with the foundational drivers. So what I'm going to show you just here is, so your top contributors to resilience, positive mindset, and we'll just look at that word resilience. So mindfulness, the ability to shut your mind down, then your sleep, exercise, and nutrition, feeling connected. But you know what? You need to be in quite a good space to have that positive outlook. You need to have a certain amount of energy on board to have that positive outlook. And the problem is that we're living in such an overwhelming world that we don't always, or in fact, we very seldom have that capacity on hand, that energy on hand. We just feel like we're bleeding energy all the time and we're not creating energy. So resilient people do have a positive mindset. They reframe everything. But how do they create the energy to be in that space? So they are energized enough to manage their emotions. In other words, something is happening between a stimulus and a reaction. Something is happening so that they can actually think, keeping that frontal cortex going and then responding, rather than having that adrenaline, cortisol, fight or flight, fear triggered stressful response. Okay, so they know how to replenish their energy and how to be positive. They're part of a supportive network. All of that replenishes your energy. And people who don't have those things in place, those are the people who are in danger of eventually suffering burnout. And how do you know where you are? So here's an energy zone map. Okay, so here's where you optimally want to be. So your immune system is very, very linked to the degree of stress that you're holding in your body. Okay, so your immune system, when you are relaxed, when you've got in a relaxed physiological state, your immune goes up, your gut health goes up, your sleep goes up, your energy goes up. Okay, you self-aware, you open-minded, you're present, you focus, you're inspired. And I know that you're reading all of this and you're thinking, oh, I wish I was there. Okay. You've got empathy. You've got enough energy on hand to actually connect with other people. Emotional intelligence, which means you can think about what you're feeling, what other people are feeling. Your self-worth is good. Your trust in life. You've got healthy boundaries, conscious recovery loops, creative expression. And the last one is your breath. Okay, so you are breathing in a certain way. When you are in your optimum or your flow zone. And when you are moving up into the danger zone, into the fight or flight or freeze zone, your breath changes. Okay, so now what's hopefully becoming obvious is that your breath, how you breathe, the rate that you breathe is linked to your nervous system. Okay, so it's your autonomic nervous system. So in other words, it's happening automatically, and we've got two sides to the autonomic nervous system. There's a parasympathetic side, which is your relaxed state, which is where all of these wonderful things are more likely to happen, okay? Or there's your sympathetic state, which is your stressed state. And the problem is that, we're living in such a very, very busy world with so much stuff happening all the time. Change is the new constant. It's a volatile world. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. The workspace is uncertain. We are exposed to a lot of negative news. So this has got a negative effect on your nervous system because you're plugged into the world around you unless you make a specific decision for yourself and you do something that overrides that stress response. Okay, so now we saw that exercise, nutrition, sleep-wake cycle, those are sort of really important foundational things that you need to have in place to stay in a relaxed physiological state and to stay calm. But breath, the rate of breathing, is something that you can change instantly, that you can do while you are doing anything else in your life, that can, within 2 minutes, completely change the level of stress hormones that are coursing through your body. So what happens when you get a fright? You're going to go, okay, and the minute you do that, immediately your adrenaline cortisol levels shoot up. If they go up high enough, it is going to slow down the function of your frontal lobes, your prefrontal cortex. You're not going to be thinking as rationally. You're not going to respond necessarily with the same amount of emotional intelligence. And it's going to take some time before those adrenaline cortisol levels come down and your entire brain is back on board. There's a whole lot of reasons why the brain does that, but it really is just around survival. So if you need to get out of a room because something threatening has come into it and there's an obstacle that you've got to jump over, you can't first start figuring out whether you can actually do that or not. You're going to act without thinking. So it is a survival mechanism. But when this is happening all the time and you're in that stress state where you're breathing rapidly, you're not moving your diaphragm enough, maybe breathing through your mouth. Did you see when I went in through the mouth? So that immediately indicates to your brainstem that there is a threat, even if there isn't a threat. And potentially over time, because we are exposed to a lot of stress all the time, your automatic breathing changes. So whereas we might be programmed to breathe optimally, by the time we get to where we are all sitting at the moment, we're not breathing optimally anymore. So your breath is not supporting your brain-body state of being able to switch off, of being able to get to that space where you can really have a great night's sleep. I mean, science is showing us more and more how important sleep is. Sleep is absolutely vital for your well-being. But you need to be in a certain state. It's not a question of, well, I got 8 hours sleep because I took a sleeping tablet or I had half a bottle of red wine, and it's not going to do the trick. Okay. So the trick is to actually go to sleep without any sleep aids, because then you're having the right kind of sleep, the right amount of deep sleep, of rapid eye movement, dream sleep. There's so much going on in your brain while you're sleeping at night, much more than what's going on in your brain during the day. So now we know, okay, the mouth breathing is not good because that's going to raise my stress levels, my adrenaline, cortisol levels automatically. So anyone who snores at night, you don't have to put your hand up, but just know that your cortisol levels at night are too high. Okay, so you really want to do something that stops the mouth breathing at night. We'll go into that if there's time a little bit later on. And then shallow breathing. So the freeze zone is also a stress state, and that's where you really almost, it's that, have you ever seen an animal when they go into that space where they feel absolutely threatened and they just freeze? They can't even run away anymore. Okay, and actually it's a deeper state of stress than fight or flight, where you just can't function anymore. Okay, so what can you do with immediate effect is you can focus on the way that you breathe. And when we become aware of something, when you become aware of your emotions, when you become aware of the people around you, people close to you's emotions, you become emotionally intelligent. So when you start becoming aware of how you breathe, you start becoming breath intelligent. And so why is it so important that we use our breath as the most powerful way of building resilience? And there is so much science around this. I'm not even going to cite it, but a lot of resilient people being studied, what the scientists notice is that they all breathe in a certain way. Okay, so they breathe through their noses. Their breath is slow and deep, and they breathe with their diaphragm. So have I still got 5 minutes? How are we doing time-wise? Okay, great. That was not a very, very encouraging sure. Okay, so breathing correctly has got a massive impact ultimately on how much energy you are able to create. Because breathing correctly is going to have a positive impact on your sleep. It's going to have a positive impact on your level of fitness. I mean, there's huge shifts in terms of training professional athletes into breathing correctly. So it brings you into your body, and trauma takes you out of your body. We all have got trauma in our body, and we live in our heads, or we live besides ourselves. Okay, so one of the best ways that we know now to facilitate trauma is to start feeling yourself in your body, to start living in your body. And one way that you can do it is by becoming aware of how you are breathing. Okay, so you've got a somatic focus. When you focus on your breath, it brings you into the moment. And in this moment, there is no anxiety. Our anxiety is linked to something that we remember, okay, because your limbic brain has got a lot of stored memories of everything that it perceived previously that was threatening. Okay, so anything that even remotely, smells like that is going to push up your adrenaline and cortisol levels, and it's subconscious, whether you're aware of it or not. How many of you haven't felt suddenly, your heart start racing, and you don't know why? But that's because your limbic brain scans all the time and it's picked something up. Okay, so the future, we fear the future. I mean, we've had a wonderfully fascinating talk, but there's a lot of anxiety around, what is going to happen in that space, and how threatening is it? Because we are programmed to assess our level of safety. Breath is freely available. It's easy. Is there anyone here who finds breathing difficult or complicated? Okay. Good point. Okay. Your breath is the only part of your autonomic system, your nervous system, that you can actively control. that you can actually change, and that has an immediate effect on your entire brain body system. So it's like a car running out of control. If we are in a sympathetic, a stress state for a long chronic period of time, we forget how to relax. Okay, who's forgotten how to relax? Really, really, really relax. Okay. So the breath is like, it's like the brakes don't work anymore. And the breath is like a handbrake. So it's the very quickest way to bring down your stress levels. It's long acting. It rewires your brain. It changes your brain structures, and it ultimately changes your wellness profile. So very quickly, when you are breathing, you want to feel your lower ribs move. You do not want to feel your shoulders moving up and down. Okay. You don't want to be breathing up here. You want to be breathing from your main breathing muscles, which is your diaphragm and the lower part of your ribs. These are your accessory muscles. And when you breathe with your accessory muscles, you are creating stress. You are raising, elevating your adrenaline, cortisol levels in your brain. So by changing the way that you breathe for 5 minutes, in fact, 2 minutes, you are halving the adrenaline, cortisol. Because I was put on such a tight time schedule, I can't take you through the breathing exercise, but it's fine. You will all know exactly how to do it for yourselves. So you bring it down in 2 minutes, but if you do it for 5 minutes, it affects your level of cortisol, adrenaline in the brain body system for an hour or two. Okay. So now imagine you do it in the morning, then you do it again midday, and you do it again in the evening. And each time you've got lower stress levels for an hour or two after you do it. Okay. How many hours a day have you got lower stress levels by changing the way that you breathe for 15 minutes a day? Let me tell you about your brain. Your brain doesn't like to work hard. It doesn't. It hates working hard. You know how you know that? How easy is it to do something new, to start a new habit? Because it's new. It makes your brain work really hard. It doesn't have that neural pathway. You've got to build that neural pathway. And you do that by doing the same thing every day, hopefully at the same time, like brushing your teeth. And then that activity goes and sits somewhere else in your brain, in the basal ganglia, where now you can do it without even thinking about it. Okay? Like, do you remember brushing your teeth this morning? Do you remember? Do you?
This is a very personal question.
She didn't brush her teeth this morning.
My boyfriend had to bring my toothbrush.
Oh. So what is very interesting and actually quite noteworthy is the fact that she remembered that she forgot, because it is such an unconscious thing. And that's what happens. That's how you rewire your brain. You don't rewire your brain by going on holiday to get rid of your stress. You rewire your brain by starting a new habit, a small 2 minutes a day, 3 times a day, every day. The brain is rhythmic, because when you do something in a rhythm, and that's why we call these neurobehaviors wellness rhythms. Okay. So I promise you, I might be taking a bit too much time here, but you're going to walk away, and the only thing that you have to remember is that if you breathe differently, it's going to significantly impact your adrenaline, cortisol levels. And if you do that for long enough, over weeks or months, it starts affecting everything else. You suddenly find that you want to eat healthier, or you're sleeping better, and your mood is more positive. Sleep is my superpower. If I don't get a good night's sleep, then I can be seriously grumpy the next morning. So sleep is something that is absolutely impacted by how you're breathing. Something as simple as that. So 2 minutes a day, and ultimately you want to start off by just putting your hands on your abdomen or on your ribs. You want to feel your abdomen moving upwards, because that means that your diaphragm, which sits under your ribs here, is pushing down on the inhale. And when it pushes down, it displaces the internal organs and the belly moves outwards. That is the correct inhale. If you can slow it down to ultimately 5 counts, and then exhale slowly for 5 counts for 5 minutes a day times 3 every day, your natural breath after 3 weeks will be completely different. And how you can test that is, or check that is, you count how many cycles you breathe in a minute. So a cycle is an inhale and an exhale. That's a complete cycle. If you are breathing 14 cycles or over, your stress levels for just sitting there relaxing are too high. If it's 20 and above, it's way too high. You're in really quite a stressed state. You want to be breathing 6 cycles in a minute. Okay. So give it a try. See how many cycles you're breathing at the moment to later on tonight. And then for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, do 5 in, 5 out, and then count it again. And if your natural, comfortable breath in your body has changed to less per minute, it means that the level of adrenaline cortisol coursing through your brain-body system has come down sufficiently that your natural breath is now a slower breath. Thank you very much.
Steal this. Thank you so much, Lily. Please don't run away. No, like legit. Does anyone, can we do like one question? Yeah, you were first. You want to do a question?
Hi, I'm the boyfriend. It was my absolute pleasure. Great talk. So I just want to speak on the exercise that you mentioned in the morning, first thing in the morning, to bring down your cortisol level. But I personally think that when a normal person wakes up, they want to be energized and get that adrenaline pumping to get out of bed and get started the day. So I'm just wondering, why would we want to go against that and rather calm ourselves even more and potentially fall back asleep? Because I personally am doing a breathing exercise in the morning to actually energize myself. And I do that by doing the opposite, like taking like heavy breaths and exhaling it and doing it over and over to oxygenate my blood. And after that, I feel more awake and like more energized. So should I not be doing that in your professional opinion?
Yeah, so that's such a fabulous question. And we do wake up in the mornings and our adrenaline levels are naturally higher. Okay, because exactly for that reason. So you want to get going. Well, if you've had a good night's sleep, then your cortisol levels are higher. And there are things that you can do like exercise, which heighten it even more. But we're talking about positive stress. So use stress as opposed to distress. And so for a lot of people in the mornings, they're very anxious. And it's difficult when you're anxious to really think clearly about your day, to really, get stuck into those complex tasks. And 2 minutes of calm breathing is not going to affect that much, your ability to be energized and get through the day. And if you do find that the mornings doesn't work for you because you do like to build up your energy rather than kind of calming yourself down, then do it a little bit later on. Like maybe when you're starting to have that natural flag in cortisol, which it does dip and peak during the day, and then just find the times that it works best for you. It might work best for you to maybe even do 15 minutes before you go to sleep at night. So just feel that out for yourselves. But great question. Thanks. Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, let's take one more. One of your hands were up before. Yeah. There you go. You can ask on the mic, then they'll hear on the stream.
I found the talk very enlightening because I don't sleep much. A lot of imposter syndrome that I suffer from. So I can't fall asleep. I'm always late in the mornings because I can't wake up. And it's become so repetitive and it's so apparent to me that it's become an actual problem. So I haven't considered that breathing could be part of it. As you can tell, my breath is already gone by now. So this talk is very helpful for me. I'd like you to touch more on sleeping patterns and how we could possibly better that for a person that's starting a new career, having to learn a lot. So just to I don't sleep because I need to prepare for the next day. So I'm not an idiot tomorrow. So that's my motivation every day. Thank you.
Okay, great question. Thank you. I can't give you a whole talk on sleep, so I'm going to advise you to buy a book called Why We Sleep by Matt Walker. And really, because the brain is rhythmic, we need to get into a healthy sleeping pattern, which means we start from 5 o'clock, starting to do things in a certain way that will get the body ready for sleep. And one of them is to, at least for an hour before you sleep, to not have screens open if possible. But, that plan your day in such a way that you really can wind your system down. And there are wonderful ways that we can learn how to get our bodies into that relaxed state. There's wonderful apps, the Calm app, Yoga Nidra. But really what you want to do is you want to have a healthy bedtime routine. So there's lots of info around that, and bearing in mind that your brain loves the rhythm of it all. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. I think that's all we're allowed to do.
Thank you so much, Lily. Nice. Okay, so we have a couple of panel questions, and then after that, there's only 4 panel questions, and then if you have questions, we've got time, you can ask them. So our first panel question is up behind you, if you want to read it. Oh. Please don't switch off the questions. Okay, so we want to talk about allyship, and I have a definition here for allyship. It is a lifelong process of building and nurturing supportive relationships with underrepresented, marginalized, discriminated individuals or groups with the aim of advancing inclusion. So the questions are, have you ever experienced allyship in a tech workspace? And what was the impact of that experience? And you guys have a mic that you can share.
Okay, well, I actually do have a wonderful story, which I'm very pleased that I can share this with you tonight about allyship. I have a daughter in the tech industry. She's just started her career as a software engineer. And just as she was finishing, just after she finished her master's degree at the end of last year, she came out as transgender. And in the midst of all of that stress, she was going for job interviews. And as her company interviewed her, she was open and transparent and said, that she is in the process of transitioning, joined the company as male with her previous name. And 4 days later, all the new intakes were asked to introduce themselves to the whole company. And she chose to tell the whole company who she is. Interestingly, she got a tummy bug that night. During this week, she'd also been given all the email addresses and everything that happens when one joins a new company. and start a new job. And she ended up in hospital and missed a day's work. And when she went back to work the next day, every single individual referred to her by the correct gender, the correct pronoun, her correct name. Every email had been changed. She's been there for quite a few months, and not ever has anyone in that company slipped, not once. So the impact that had for us was just setting an unbelievable tone for her work life, the difference that would have made in her confidence moving forwards, what it did for me as a parent. I cannot begin to tell you the support of that company, their awareness, the support that's been offered to her throughout has been quite phenomenal. So I think that, and obviously, I've become a strong advocate and ally to the transgender community. And that's how vitally, vitally important it is that people are aware and that they act.
Thanks, Lily.
So for me, I think allyship is interesting as well. I think having worked in the tech industry for 15, 16 years now, one thing I've certainly had is, kindred spirits who experience similar sort of daily interactions that we're sometimes faced with, which I think, not everyone has to think about. And for me, the key thing in those situations are women like the ones sitting next to me right here. Because if you're in situations like that, where something happens and it causes a trauma response, or you get upset because of something that you didn't anticipate, you need someone that you can call and that you can talk about the incidents with, that will be able to relate to what you're going through and help you center, whether that's through breath, whether it's through having had a similar experience, to make you feel like you're part of something else, and that is something that we're tackling and we're all dealing with together, and that we have the power to influence as well. Because I think sometimes if it triggers a response, you have a momentary reaction which isn't actually helping you at all in that situation. So if you can sort of center yourself and help the people around you understand what was happening for you in that moment, to be able to center everybody and yourself, then I think we can also step towards making a change in those sorts of situations, to help that those situations don't recur. And so for me, allyship really is, especially in the tech space, a lot of communication around certain things that have happened. We have internally an amazing coffee date with the women here at Accso, which is a great way to just be able to say, hey, you know what, this happened to me. And, oh yeah, that totally happened to me last week. It's so frustrating. What can we do about it? Those kinds of things, I think have been really imperative for me in my career.
So for me, my journey has had a different sort of stance, where I sort of joined the tech space in the early 90s. So way back when, and very, very few females. So allyship for me was largely males, that helped me shape my path to where I am today. But having said that, I think there's been room for females of late. I obviously offer a lot of mentorship. So, that's a way of growing that. We also have a lot of events and community-driven things. So there's a Women in Tech sort of initiative that we have once a month, where we meet just for breakfast. Let's have a chit chat. If you want to say something, say it. If you don't, you don't have to. So, it kind of really reminds me of us being kids, right? We went through different iterations where we needed mom, then we needed dad, and, same in the workspace. I think we go through our different iterations of allyship.
All right. Thank you, panel. Jess, can I reach? I did not think this through. Yes, amazing. Okay. Our next question is about team psychological safety. So it's the shared belief held by members of the team that it is okay to take risks, to express their ideas and concerns, and speak up with questions and admit mistakes, all without the fear of negative consequences. As Edmondson puts it, it's a felt permission for candor. All right, so the question to the panel is, have you experienced psychological safety in your team, and what did it look like?
Yeah, so I mean, the closest, talking about my personal team, I work within a broader team of coaches, and then we have a smaller group of coaches who meets regularly once a month. And it has become an incredibly safe space for all 5 of us. And it is a space where we can learn from each other, where we can admit mistakes, where we can ask for help. And it's about trust. And it's about vulnerability. I think that psychological safety also, as far as I'm concerned, has got to start within yourself too. You've got to be safe in your own space. We've got to have on board whatever it is that we want to offer outwards. And the safer we are in our own space, the more safety we can offer to other people as well. It's a conversation that comes up regularly in our monthly sessions, where we try and unpack, okay, what is it over here? Why? What is it that we're drawing out of it, and what's the value? And that's what it is. It's that space where you can completely and utterly just be the true you.
I resonate with that. I think I've been lucky that I've been in several, situations within team contexts where I've had the privilege of psychological safety within the teams. I've seen it make people thrive because they feel safe to be able to express and explore. They're able to be their true self and express their authentic self without feeling the fear of being judged or ridiculed for what they have to say. I have unfortunately also been in scenarios where there wasn't psychological safety, and I've seen the destruction that causes in teams, and also the detrimental effect it has on companies in terms of productivity and in general. I think, one thing that is really important for me is that I create that within the team that I work. So I think the first step to being able to have that kind of environment is to make sure that you are creating an environment in which other people feel safe. So, that you get the same benefits. And I think that's also alluding to what Lily was saying. A little bit of it is somebody has to put their first foot forward because it is sometimes a scary space, especially within the work context, and not to say that you should bare your soul, but I do think that it is important to be able to be yourself so that you can contribute and actually be creative. There is science around that too, right? If you can't actually be creative, if you're not calm, it speaks to the breath work Lily was talking about as well. So yes, I've been lucky, and I try to foster it in the teams that I'm working with. And yeah, I can say that's certainly the case here at Accso.
Hashtag join Accso. So, for me, I think emotional safety and psychological safety is something that took me a very long time in my work environment. And unfortunately, I kind of tick the boxes for a lot that isn't represented and weren't represented through my duration of time. So, for me, trust is a long journey, and it just doesn't happen overnight. And most times we don't have that luxury. We're meant to be present. We're meant to just trust. And, it becomes a difficult conversation to have, but I think it's achievable. And, again, it's the kind of people that you hang around with or you associate yourself with that kind of make a larger impact and, kind of shorten that time frame for trust to actually be adopted. But yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you. We can go to the next one. Thank you. All right. Our next question is centered around imposter syndrome. I got you in the yellow tracksuit. Okay, so imposter syndrome is a behavioral health phenomenon described as self-doubt or of intellect, skills, or accomplishments among high-achieving individuals. So, what is the one thing that the panel thinks the tech industry can do to change to be more inclusive towards these marginalized communities that feel imposter syndrome in this space?
I'm not sure why I'm first every time, but you know, as I said, I love the brain, and for me, the brain is a system, like any system, like an organization, and it's, you know, I work a lot with coaches, people who come to me, clients who say to me, I'm suffering from imposter syndrome, and I can't say to them, you know, okay, well, let's just look at, you know, the narrative and let's start changing things. It's like saying, oh, you're very tired, you're overworked, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious. What about a holiday? You've got to rewire the brain. Okay, you've got to rewire the system to support people, that they don't feel imposter syndrome, that they feel that sense of ownership, of belonging, of value, of worthiness.
So for me, I think two things on this topic. Imposter syndrome is quite common. We had a talk about it here at the last Women's Day event, which was fascinating. I suffer from it all the time. A lot of people I know do, male and female. It doesn't discriminate. And one thing that really made me feel good, just in recent months, because obviously there's ups and downs, you know, we sometimes all go through phases where we're a bit more anxious than other times. Now I will be using my breath more, is to talk to some very senior people who experience it all the time and who are open about it. You know, to me, I think this is one of those topics we don't talk about it because it makes us vulnerable. But for me, having had somebody who is in a very senior position to me come out and say, you know what, that's okay. It happens to me all the time. I sometimes walk into meetings and I have no idea what I'm doing here. That's comforting, strangely. But it's good to know that, you know, it's not just you and it's okay. You take a deep breath and you walk into the meeting anyway, or, you know, you tackle what it is that you have to do. When it comes to, you know, one thing that I think the tech industry can create, you know, I want to just reference it back to women, because one of the things that I think has caused me quite a bit of what am I doing here has been becoming a mother in the last 2 years. I have a 2-year-old, and coming back to work after that was quite a bit of an adjustment, you know, because hormones and, you know, your sense of the world completely changes. But when that happened to me, I think for a long time, I was thinking, I feel like it's too much. I don't know how I can deal with all of this at once. And I think one of the things that we can do is to create structures and systems within our working environments that give, for example, paternity leave, extended paternity leave is something that is very practical, that is very simple, that we think about it, you know, sometimes in an isolated way. And we say, okay, 13 days paternity or 15 days or whatever it is in South Africa. You know, if we just do a simple task and extend that period, you're actually supporting the partner, because inadvertently the parent that now gets more leave is more involved with the child, which means you get a little bit more of a break and support to be able to, you know, engage with other things as well. So I think those are the kinds of practical things that we can potentially do in the tech industry to just support these kinds of, you know, struggles and potentially help with how you feel overwhelmed and all alone. So yeah.
Thanks.
So imposter syndrome obviously is real. We've all experienced it in some shape, form, or manner, and it's really about, you know, allowing ourselves like room to be able to just go through the process. So that's something that, you know, our tolerance for each other or towards each other to actually let that facilitate and sort of happen tends to be very narrow. And, that's something I'd probably want to see a lot more of. And with that, I guess it's how do we, do that inward reflection of imposter syndrome and, I should be this, tomorrow I should be that, the next day or the next minute, it's headed in that direction. And it's just about taking a breath. It's all okay, and getting back to your core values. What are they? What are your core morals? And getting back to that grounding point, right? Because that's the narrative that kind of sets you back on a level playing field of saying, well, it's actually just okay. I went through a phase, whatever that phase was, right? That's the one side. But then the other side is, how do we actually interpret it when other people tell us that we have an imposter syndrome, right? How do we deal with that? So like having a room available for that sort of discussion as honest and frank. I mean, listen, it's no joke actually hearing self-criticism, right? We, as women, we probably do that a lot, but having a friend tell you that, ouch, kind of really stings, right? So, but, having the mindset and kind of switching between caps. So I remember one of the books that I had gotten at my first job was a recommendation from my manager called Six Thinking Hats by Edward de Bono. Amazing. Like, it's one thing that's helped me survive in this tech space and probably still does to date. And, it probably helps to cope with the different imposter syndromes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we got one last question. Okay. So also on imposter syndrome, or linked to it, is what small piece of advice would you like to share with the women in the tech space today so that they can promote themselves in the space that they feel out of place?
I think promoting oneself, it's not so much about selling yourself. It's got a lot to do with who you're being on a consistent level and how you are being. People, we know, we know what other people's capabilities are, and we know how they're showing up without them having to go through a sales pitch. So I think just, do your absolute best. Live your best values. Be your best self every single day.
Mine is probably feel the fear and do it anyway. Because that happens all the time. And I think, what Lily says resonates with me here as well, in the sense that someone wise once told me that, if you look back at your life the way that a painter looks at a painting, with every brushstroke being something that you did, even if you made an error, just remember, it's your painting. You can fix it. If you don't like a brushstroke you made and it looks ugly, so what? You turn it into a flower. As long as you could look at it at the end of your life and you can be like, cool, I'm okay with this, then I think, that is the way to go. And so I think, I look at my situations, if I have a moment where I'm freaking out or, a similar sort of way, I just go, you know what, I did my best here and I felt the fear and I did it anyway and I did the best that I could. Looking back on it, I'm okay with that. So, yeah.
For me, it's about just being curious. Curiosity for me has kind of led me down a very winded path, but just to kind of give you a bit of insight to that winded path, when I finished high school, I had a choice. That choice was to take a bursary and study psychology, or to take out a student loan and study computer science. No, guess what I did? But 10 years later, actually went back and studied my psychology, just because I was always curious about the human mind. So, again, just curiosity leads you into many different areas, many different facets. And, the one piece of advice I'd gotten very early on was never say no. So when someone kind of suggests something, kind of test it, like say, okay, let's walk down this path, right? Let's learn. Because if you see life from a curious angle, you're always learning, you're always evolving. And then you kind of not as hard on yourself, I feel. Anyway.
Thank you, panel. I think we can do one question from the audience. Hand shot up. All right.
There's a burning question at the back.
I would normally talk without the mic, but I'm losing my voice, so I don't think I can shout that loud. So I do quite a bit of work in primary schools, and so the question is for all three of you. One of the things that I think has really lessened the amount of women that are in the tech space is that gaming and all of those things where that interest in technology kind of starts is not that popular, with all girls are told or led to believe like these kind of things. And I know that it's changing, but within the tech space, kids are the most curious, the amount of knowledge that they can absorb while still in primary school. So how can companies in the tech space work within schools to equally engage boys and girls, to close the gap between the interest in the genders that move in? Because there's no doubt in capability and skill between male and female within the tech industry. It's just a matter of interest and feeding the curiosity. So how can companies go out there and work with schools to actually bring up a bigger interest in the tech space for the future generation?
I think that's a fantastic question. I have no idea if my answer is going to satisfy you, because I'm certainly not the expert in this field. But you know, I can speak from a personal perspective, just looking at my 2-year-old. She's incredibly curious, and she's smart. And I think the way to do this is to probably foster curiosity in kids as much as you can, you know. And there's the most amazing tools out there. One of my favorite principal engineers has given me a book for a 2-year-old to learn the basic principles of coding. It is amazing. It is so sweet. So I think, you know, looking at alternative ways of being able to foster that curiosity in kids so that they can understand the building blocks and get excited about this stuff, you know, and by not projecting your own gender stereotypes onto your own kids. And this is stuff we do even from, you know, when we're still pregnant, right? You know, it's a boy, it's a girl, it's this, it's that. And that's our own projections. So I think maybe just being more conscious from a personal individual perspective, and fostering that curiosity. From a business perspective, I think creating environments that are conscious of, you know, inclusion, making sure that we don't even if it's not deliberate, most of the time it's not, right? Educating ourselves about how do we create curiosity, how can we generate creativity from a young age. You know, I think a lot of this has to do with the way in which people are schooled. So I think there probably needs to be a lot of reform from a very sort of early schooling sort of perspective. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
As I'm not totally in the
That's quite all right. So for me, this kind of hits home quite a lot, and Kati knows that. But I'm a mom of twin girls. They're 14, and I kind of got frustrated with the education system because I felt they weren't getting the kind of things that they needed to get access to, right? Especially being in the tech space. Guess what? You know that they kind of need to be on top of things, right? So yeah, I would say it's a combination of just being brave enough and bold enough to kind of take a different stance. So I ended up homeschooling them for a long while. And as a result, they got access to a whole lot of things that they normally wouldn't have, like an apprenticeship program in robotics. Unfortunately, that was in the USA, right? Which was fine for a year. You know, and then they had a scholarship in quantum computing at the age of 14. Great. You know, but like that, I think we've built ourselves as a society where we say you can't because of an age. I mean, to push it even further, they're 14 and they're matriculating this year. Okay. So again, and their sort of thing is don't no, but like they refuse to be put into a box. They're like, it's ageism reversed. And you can't argue with that, right? So like from my experience in having that, I know that there's a need to create spaces, right? So there's no reason why companies can't actually cater for interns or apprenticeships within their organizations, whether it's a summer internship or apprenticeship program, whatever, but give them the tangibility, right? Because that becomes important. We don't have the kind of ecosystem from a schooling perspective or university perspective to kind of say, like, it's an MIT, yeah, go crazy, you know, whatever you build may end up as a startup. We don't have that fully fledged within our ecosystem. So we kind of got to do it in small spurts, right? That's the first. And then the second is, I think entrepreneurship in youngsters is super, super key. You know, again, I think I was having a conversation earlier on, like the youngest or the average age in Africa is 18.8 years, right? We young guys, like literally, I know I'm like ridiculously old compared to 18.8, but you know, the thing is that we need to target that audience, right? So our schooling needs to change. The way we interact needs to change. The products we give out needs to change. What we develop, how we see the world, right? Everything, the economy, everything needs to fundamentally just shift, right? And how do you allow for that to happen? You can only allow for that to happen if you allow them as youth to integrate into our spaces. So like on an African Union perspective, they already have, you know, like 15, 16-year-olds sitting and participating in policy changes, which is great, right? But it's small numbers, right? And here we're talking about how will you fundamentally shift or change an entire sector. So unfortunately, I don't have enough time for that.
And to bring the wellness into it, one of the things that I'm not in the IT space myself. I'm in the wellness space, but I love tech and I'm always working things out. And one of the things that I know for a fact it has taught me is how to think outside. Where schools nowadays are teaching kids to parrot learn. Basically, it's ABC, and if you need to do F before C, they don't know what to do because they haven't learned that. Whereas working in the IT space and working on the internet and coding and things like that, it teaches you to look far broader. And I love that you brought up Edward de Bono because he's got another book about the lateral thinking and that. But the question is, if you have money or you're in the middle class, you can afford to homeschool your kids. You can afford to get a book on coding. What can we do? What can companies in the tech space do? Because there's a couple of mental wellness benefits here. The one is just the curiosity, being engaged, things like that. It's learning resilience. It's learning how to reach further than what is around them. But it's also showing them that people are interested in them when outside people come and get involved in their school. We have a lot of poverty here in Cape Town alone, and we have a lot of schools that kids are coming to school and they can't even concentrate because they haven't eaten for 3 days. Okay, so they can't learn, they can't do things. So yes, we can shorten that gap between genders and we can invoke curiosity in that if you can afford it. How can we develop something or take something into schools that don't have money, that don't have the opportunity to engage in their curiosity and to grow their minds at an age that is so we waste it if we don't engage in it. Like is there things that tech company, there's a lot, I'm just going to put this out there. If anybody owns a tech company or is the manager of a tech company and wants to get involved, come speak to me. I don't know how it looks. I don't know whether it's people coding like a program that 5-year-olds can learn the building blocks of things like that. But I mean, I just don't really see much of engaging in the younger kids. We're talking about internships, colleges, applications and that. But the kids have already made the decision by that time.
Lavina.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the Reach Trust?
Yes.
So Andrew is fantastic. If you haven't had an introduction, I will introduce you to him. He's phenomenal. Him and I worked together for quite some time. Him and his engineers have been working on a couple of early childhood development applications that they're taking out to all of the schools. I was involved, I think 5-6 years ago, maybe, with the rollout of over 150 schools in the Boerland alone. And those are all underprivileged areas. So I'll put you in touch there because there's definitely things we can do. And I mean, it is very well researched that some of the basic building blocks of children being able to learn the concepts of mathematics, the alphabet, and all of those things happen in those first 3 years of development. That has to do with identification of shapes, the most basic things. So there's certainly things I think that tech can do to support that. Sim was pointing out the sustainability goals. We are big on the SDGs. So, that's one of them, helping people out of poverty. It's because of context a lot of the time. So I think, if we can get involved with projects like this is certainly something that we aim for as well. And, I'll be most happy to introduce you.
Yeah, so I've seen a couple of projects kind of on the go. I even sit on one education sort of give back scenario in Nigeria. So I kind of know that like in those areas, Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, like this stuff that's actively happening all the time, right? SA, we need to get better at it, right? But so for example, Kenya has a policy for all school goers, which is 100% connectivity to the internet, right? So at some point, you got to put a peg in the ground and you got to say from this day going forward, this is the sort of new norm that you're going to have, right? So, there was a debate if you had to rewrite Maslow's hierarchy, what would it look like? Internet's one of them. Like, no kid is going to walk in and like, where's the internet? Where's the internet? Like, no. That's it. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So, to your point, there's a lot that we can do, but it's how do we do it? So yes, we need to solve a problem, but in the context of Africa, we have a multi-layered problem. It's never ever one-dimensional, right? So a kid coming to school hungry, yeah, you could feed them, but then what, right? We've had iterations in SA where we've seen physical infrastructures being put into schools, and then that doesn't survive, right? It's not sustainable. So there's a thing called liquid upskilling, which is huge in terms of, just give them the skill sets that they need over a short period of time, so that they kind of get the essence of what's actually needed and what's required. And then they understand how to then apply it, right? So we're going back to the days of, what's a plumber, what's an electrician, all of that stuff, but in the tech space, right? So it's giving them those short iterations of, hey, this is what blockchain is, this is what AI is, this is how tangible it is, this is what you can do with it. So I do know that from a South Africa perspective, they've also introduced robotics as a standard now across all public schools. So there is that's happening. So again, I think it requires all of us to kind of put on our hats and say, what can we do collectively? And I think that's your ask today.
I could add to it. Do you want me to add to it?
So I have a few more things to say, and that is thank you so much for your incredible talks. I think everybody's appreciated the speakers tonight. Can we give them another round of applause? I have a gift for each of you. Oh, the small pop better not to. Thank you.
It's not gonna go crazy. Thank you so very much. There we go. Thank you. Can I give you a hug?
Yes, of course. There we go.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having us, guys.
Yeah. I have not left Kati out. I promise. Oh, I have to present it. No. Why is it going backwards? Thank you. All right. Okay. One more thank you to our GDG team that helped us out tonight. Yeah. Thank you so much, Liz. Yeah. I don't know if you saw her on her phone, but she was tweeting the whole time what was happening at the event. It was really cool. Okay. And then my Accso team. Guys, can my Accso team just stand and wave? Can my Accso team just stand? There's a couple of them. Guys, they've done the most incredible things for you tonight. It took an entire team to make this happen. And it's been amazing working with you. So these three guys I cornered this morning to take this photo because they did the live stream for us. And they were like thick in it this morning. And then Kati and I were at the Deep Learning in Durban together. Another thing I really recommend. And we took this really cute picture, and then Kati decided to post it on LinkedIn this morning. But she's truly been a rock for this event. Seriously, Kati. I'm really passionate about this. And Kati joined, and she was very passionate about this as well. And I was like, yes, a friend. So thank you so much. I have some flowers for you. This would not have happened without an audience. So thank you so much for everybody that came tonight. Please give yourselves a hand of applause. Thank you so much. We know that travel arrangements were probably tricky, and we really appreciate that you made it. Okay, so this is the same QR code in many different places. It's just a way of yes, it's just a way of saying I really want your feedback. So if you scan this, there's also a couple of them around the room. Please tell us how we can do better next time, what you enjoyed, what do you want to see. We would love your feedback. And that is it. Okay.
Sorry, I promise I'm not hogging the mic. I really just also want to thank somebody very, very important in this event, without whom this would not have been possible because he bankrolled us. So Adam, don't you want to just get up? And we just want to say thanks to you as well for supporting us in this important cause. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. It's been awesome organizing this all together. And yeah, we really appreciate the support. So, another round for him, please.
Okay, cool. There are some snacks left. I see. Eat. Network. Yep.
Is there red wine left?
I'm sure there's red wine left.